welcome back to the Whatnauts review show number 221. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson.
Hello.
Melissa, how's your weekend going so far?
It's going well. I'm enjoying this Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to take part in the new holiday of National Cinema Day?
I did not, but I heard about it, that they had the like $3 movie tickets all day on Saturday. That's cool. I like that. That's a good idea.
I was happy to see it happen. I really wanted to go out and see a movie, but I had a day full of like errands, and I had to go to like my little cousin's birthday party and do laundry. And by the time I would have had been free for a movie, it's like, well, do you want to go start something at 9:30? I'm like, I would not. Thank you. I almost made it. I almost had enough time to go see a 3D version of Jaws.
Ooh, that would have been fun.
So I would have been seeing a 40, and it was only playing at like one theater in my area, which is in like an old mall. And I think it's just like the theater, One Cheesecake Factory, and V-Stock that still exists there. So I almost saw a 45-year-old movie in a vintage format in a dead mall. This like turducken.
Amazing. Amazing.
The past. I would have cut the timing too close. It's like, I'm not going to rush this. This is one of the few theaters out there that doesn't have the reserved seating. I don't want to show up and have to sit in the front. So
yeah,
not for me. But tonight I think I'm going to go see like a 40th anniversary presentation of Wrath of Khan.
Nice. That's on my list of shame, which we'll get to my list of shame in just a sec here. I spent all day yesterday playing a video game called Immortality. I briefly mentioned this to you last week, where it is this like it's this full motion video game. It's real actors playing these characters. It's not a CGI thing here. It's kind of this like found footage aesthetic, which is really neat, but it is about a character, this movie star who kind of goes missing. She makes 3 movies in the 70s and early 80s and 90s, and then just kind of leaves the spotlight, and no one really knows what happens to her. And so by digging through all of this footage, you kind of have to piece together what happened to her, why she left the spotlight, and all this stuff. Fantastic. I liked it a lot. Got a little obtuse towards the end when it was just like, okay, I feel like this should be wrapping up, and it's not. What's going on here? What do I look for? I feel like I'm at the end, and it wasn't ending, so it overstayed its welcome just a tad bit. But I had a lot of fun. It was really neat. It was really, really cool. So that's what I did this weekend. But Melissa, welcome to Shametember. First week in Shametember 2022. Yeah.
Everyone go out and get your pumpkin shame lattes to celebrate the season. Put out your shame decorations.
There you go. Big side box. That's what I need. The like balloons like we had back there for our 200th thing. It just says shame.
Shame.
Good God. If you guys did
you're
not
not allowed to sit there. You have to sit facing the corner. You have to podcast from there.
Yeah, the big old dunce cap on. If you guys did not know, here every year on the Whatnauts review show in September, we take 2 weeks for what we call Shametember, in which, Melissa, you and I take turns pitching things that are on our list of shame. Could be comic book, could be a movie, could be all sorts of things. But it has to be something that is like specific to you, of like, Melissa, how have you not seen this? This is such a you movie.
Yeah.
Or it can be such a pop culture juggernaut that it's like, how do you not know? How have you not seen Wrath of Khan, which is on my list of shame? I've not seen anything Star Trek except the first J.J. Abrams one, which I did not like, so I stopped.
You tell me this once a year that you didn't like this movie.
Basically, because I know that a lot of people like them. And I'm just like, yeah,
I like it.
Didn't like them. But yes, we are here to talk about some of the things that are on our list of shame. This week, it happened to work out that the thing that was on my list also happened to be on your list. And so this week, we are here to talk about the Godfather Trilogy. I had never seen them until now, until this week.
Yeah.
It's just something I've heard people say a number of lines. I've seen pictures. I've seen GIFs. I've seen clips. But I haven't
You've seen the poster.
Right. I've seen the poster. I'm sure maybe one time I saw the book at Barnes & Noble. Who knows? Had not seen the actual movie until now. And it had been on my list of shame, but mainly the reason why I pitched it this year was because about a month and a half ago, I watched The Offer on Paramount Plus, which is a dramatization of the making of the Godfather. Miles Teller plays Al Ruddy, who was the producer of the film. Miles Teller is brilliant as always, basically. I highly recommend it. Go check it out. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. But because I liked it so much, I was like, it's probably about time I watched The Godfather. Like, it's a good laid up into like actually watching it. And so, yeah, I was just like, well, that has to be one of the things that I pitched for Shametember here. But Melissa, it happened to be on your list of shame.
Yes.
Too. What's your cultural experience with
Same as yours. Same as yours, but with more episodes of The Simpsons.
Okay. Yeah.
And I feel like it's a little different for me. Like, it is a movie or a series of movies I've been meaning to get to. I've thought about pitching it on the show before, maybe for our first episode of the year. We always spend our holiday break with a movie franchise, and we come back and we talk about however many of those there are.
Yeah.
It's been on there for a while, but I feel like, not to play into old-fashioned stereotypes, but it's on your list of shame as a man in a way that it's not exactly on my list of shame as a woman. Like, I feel like I might get a pass on it.
Yeah. Interesting you bring that up, too, because that's one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about with this film, too. But we'll get into that once we get into spoilers and stuff like that. But generally speaking, though, what did you think now that you've seen the entire trilogy? What were your thoughts?
I was expecting that I surely would appreciate this movie. Like, the series must be a classic for a reason. But I also thought these are older movies. Maybe there's a pace that doesn't work on me as a younger audience member. They're very long. It's like a subject matter, like a genre I'm not super into. I thought, surely I will get bored. I will glaze over. I will lose interest. And I honestly never did. I don't think I could tell you really what happens. I could not explain The Godfather to you, but I did thoroughly enjoy The Godfather. I was surprised by how much I really did like these movies.
Yeah. I feel like I've been wrestling with it. On one hand, yes, I absolutely recognize why this is a classic, why it's so lauded and revered, why people write all sorts of dissertations on it and all who knows what, right? Like, that stuff is in there. I recognize that. I enjoyed it. But I feel like I'm also in a similar boat. There are details about this that I don't think really stuck with me. I did at times find myself kind of losing interest, but then it always roped me back in with something. And part of me is I've also, like, I recently watched Goodfellas for the first time about 2 years ago, I think now at this point. I watched I watched all of The Sopranos.
Oh yeah.
I'm starting to kind of realize that maybe I'm just not as into like mafia movies as I want to be. Like and that's just like, again, I recognize they're good. I enjoyed them, but just not a priority for me. I don't think they'd be making my top list of like, oh, these are my favorites, right? Like all that stuff. So I like it was an experience I enjoyed and appreciated, and I'm glad I did it. Don't know if I'm really gonna return to it, if that makes sense.
I can get that. I loved these movies in terms of visuals, like the way it's shot, the cinematography, the music, just the mood of the thing. And I listened to some film podcasts talk about the first two Godfather movies this week. Like I finally got the context. Let me listen to all these podcast episodes I've never heard. And I think it was on Unspooled that Paul Scheer and Amy Nicholson are talking about how this movie feels like being in front of a fireplace on a snowy day. Like that is the mood of the film. I can, if the movies weren't filled with crying children and gunshots, this would be like the movies I put on when I have a sick day and I want to take a nap. Like they're that cozy in a weird way. And to talk about the third one separate from parts 1 and 2, I'd always heard the cliche, the like widely agreed upon cultural consensus of first two movies masterpieces, third one trash. And I was always like, how did that happen? How does that work? How it's not just like, oh, third one's kind of a letdown. Like people seem to hate the third one. I'm like, how did that happen? What's going on? And I looked into it and I didn't know that the first two came out in 72 and 74 and part 3 came out in 1990. And like, Coppola didn't want to make it. I think he had like, he had like some less than successful projects. He needed some money. He needed a win. He's like, well, let's finally try and do part 3. And he wanted to call it just the Godfather Coda, just the death of Michael Corleone. Like this isn't, it's an appendix. It's an epilogue. It's not part 3. But the studio made him call it part 3. And now when you do look it up on streaming services or anywhere, like it is relabeled as the Godfather Coda, the death of Michael Corleone, which I think is a more appropriate way to think about it.
To clarify, the coda, the one that is labeled as such, is basically more like the director's cut. It is not the original theatrical release. So there are some changes to that fix some of the things that people don't like as much. But it's still, I mean, I think of the 3 movies, that one was maybe the least interesting, but still had some great scenes in there. Like it still had some just like, this is fascinating stuff, but it just not the same interest level, if that makes sense.
The third one is where my interest did drop off a little bit. Like I was on my phone during parts of it. It did not connect with me. I found it confusing and distressing. But Godfather Part 3 is one of the most beautiful films I have ever seen. The lush, rich colors, the set pieces. I loved looking at it. I know like Sofia Coppola's performance has been ragged on, but she's so beautiful. Like her makeup and her hair and her dresses. I just love to look at everything in this movie. This is my perfect like put it on mute at a party movie. I want to go into a restaurant and see this movie but not hear it playing.
Sure. Like a lot of the women in this movie, unfortunately, seen but not heard. So here's what you mentioned a good point that I think is what fascinates me about these films is kind of the history around them, how they were made, why they were made. That's why I think The Offer was so fascinating to me. And I'm also kind of realizing that genre, this like historical dramatization of like a Hollywood like making of kind of thing is fascinating to me. the history of how The Godfather was made, all the stuff that went into that, why they cast certain people, all the troubles they had to get those certain people cast, or to not have them fired, or stuff like that, is fascinating. And that is the thing that was so interesting to me about the first movie, is like having a bit of that historical context. I'm not sure exactly what was embellished and what was more true in The Offer. There was a lot of parallels in The Offer of what they were doing in that show and what was happening in the first Godfather movie. So I feel like there was some embellishments with that. But still, it's just like, that is the thing that is interesting to me, is just, how much of a mega hit this became. And no one thought it was going to be that. And then once they had that, it's just like, well, shit. Now what do we do? Make a second one. Go. We have more of the book to do. Yeah. And then, just the third one doesn't come out till 1990. Right, it's a whole like 12, no, like 15, 16 years, after that. And it's just like, man, the expectations were so high, and it was just muddled in this like studio culture and creative back and forth of what it should be. So it's fascinating to watch and experience and talk about, but the movies themselves, maybe for me personally, not something I would really go back to very often. So
I can see myself watching these again in the future, but I don't know if I'll pay attention to them. I may just soak them in like they're a candle.
Sure. Well, cool. Let's see. We will take a quick break for housekeeping. And when we come back, we will dive into spoilers. So we will be right back. We put a lot of hard work into the shows that we make. And yes, we make multiple different shows here at the Whatnauts. And we'd love it if you check them all out. You can find out more information on our website at thewhatnauts.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in the Whatnauts, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. If you want to support what we do here at the Whatnauts, patreon.com/thewhatnauts is the best place to do that. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of exclusive content at the $3 tier. You can also get a shout out and a thank you on all of our shows at the $5 tier. You can support us on Twitch by subscribing to our channel at twitch.tv/thewhatnauts, and we would love to have you all join us for our live streams and talk with us in the chat. And lastly, we have merch. If you'd like to grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a mug or something else, go to thewhatnauts.com/store to pick up some merch today. And we are back. A big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you all so much for supporting us. It means a lot. We appreciate it. Cool things that we've been up to here at the Whatnauts. This past week here on the review show, we covered season 5 of Fringe, which concluded our monthly coverage of that show. We've been sticking with that one month to month. Great sci-fi show if you're into like the X-Files, if you're into that like mystery case of the month style show. But the interesting thing about it is that the show kind of abandons that by the end and is like full on into the history and lore of that show. It has great characters and stuff like that. So please go check it out. In the future, for our end of the month specials, we're going to be reading a comic called Kaiju Max, which is a comic. It's a prison story, but the prisoners are all kaiju. They're all giant monsters. So that should be a lot of fun. That's what we will be covering at the end of each month, with a caveat on October that'll be at the start of November. But the end of each month through the rest of the year here. So we got some exciting stuff coming here on the review show. The captain's log this past week was just kind of a more hangout, chill. What have we been watching?
Yeah.
Talking about all that stuff. We got to finally talk about Severance.
Yeah.
On the captain's log. You got to tell me about some interesting podcasts that you've been, or like podcasts and YouTube series that you've been checking out, with some like Y2K bank robbery heist thing that I thought was fascinating. So good stuff with that. Good stuff. Sadly, though, for housekeeping, we do want to mention that our video game podcast Crossplay is ending. It has come to an end. Our final regular podcast was number 131, which came out this weekend. So that should be up by time this goes public. But don't unsubscribe yet. There is more coming. We are hoping to do a kind of last hurrah big party celebration. We're hoping to get some guests on the show. We're planning it all out. So stay tuned. There will be like a final thing from us, maybe final things. We're not sure exactly, but stay tuned with that. But yeah, it's sad because I had a lot of fun with that podcast. I'm a big video game nerd, so I like to talk about the latest video game news and all that sort of stuff. So, but yeah, that is a sad thing. That being said, I will keep you up to date on what Alan and Ignacio are up to, because they are also planning a new podcast that you guys can follow along. It won't be here on the Whatnauts, but I will let you guys know what that is when they start it, and so you guys can go follow and subscribe and all of that good stuff. But yeah, that is about it for housekeeping. So, Melissa, I say we get into spoilers. Here we go. Darth Vader shows up in the third one. Things go off the rails. The studio demanded it. They said, Coppola, you better put him in or you're fired. And
you're friends with George.
Happened.
We know you can do it. We're going to put Vito in Return of the Jedi. Don't worry. We'll balance it out. You two will be even Stevens.
Man. Okay. So where do we start with this?
Okay. I want to start with how there's so many images from this series that you get to know through pop culture osmosis over the years.
Sure.
And I was surprised to find that all of them are in like the first hour of the first movie.
Pretty much. Yeah, there's a few like famous lines and stuff. Like I think I guess it was last week on the captain's log, you asked me like where I was exactly. And I was like, I'm halfway in the second one. I'm a little bit past the famous line for Fredo. Like, I knew it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart. Like, that's where I was just a little bit past that. Like, that's a line that I've heard. But
I think I have heard that, but I didn't know this is what it was from.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Most of every, like, now having watched all three of them, most of all the cultural osmosis that I had gotten from these films, from the first Godfather, basically from the first, like, the half of that film there, which is kind of wild to think about. But, yeah.
The horsehead scene in particular, everybody knows the horsehead scene. I think I've known about it since I was like 9 years old. And to see it in context, it's still very effective as this horrifying scene. But it's part of this minuscule, it's like plot line G in the entire story that just exists as like an example of powers that this family has. It doesn't really come into play in the rest of the series. And I thought that was interesting that it's just this little side story is where this infamous image comes from.
I mean, it's
and I thought it was.
horrifying.
It is. It's truly very scary. And I thought it was so funny that as soon as you know the horse's name immediately, he's got like his name stitched on his little vest that he wears. Like, oh, Khartoum, this is my prized horse, Khartoum. Meanwhile, I don't think you get Connie's name until 2 hours into the movie. The whole like first half hour of this movie is about this girl's wedding, and nobody names her. It's just like my daughter, my sister, the wedding. And it's only when she becomes this like victim of abuse that her brother needs to step in and save do they actually give her a name. And I'm like, why does the horse get that priority over Connie?
Yeah, indeed. So this is one of the interesting things that I noticed about the film, and I think a lot of people have too, is that women in this movie kind of get the short end of the stick, right? They're there. A few of them are named, but they're kind of pushed off to the side. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if all of these movies even really pass the Bechdel test.
No,
who knows? But it's been talked about that this film is kind of anti-feminist, or that maybe Coppola's views on women aren't the best. I actually read something last night though that was trying to argue the opposite in showing that it's not that like Coppola hated women or something like that. It just is. It is this. It is like these movies at the end of the day are a tragedy. Like it is the original Godfather dies off, and then Michael, who didn't really want to be involved, he was kind of the good boy of the family, is transformed into this monster, right? And then has to take over the family, and then so on and so forth. And it is this tragic film, and this piece that I was writing, I completely forget who it was written by, was basically saying it's in part because the women aren't a part of their lives that this is happening, that they aren't given decision-making power, or they aren't privy to the secrets or the behind the scenes. Like, they aren't there to support. They're left out of this. And that's why these bad things happen. Whereas if you also have to think about what time period this is trying to depict to where a lot of women were just kind of left out of that, or deemed like not as smart or not as capable to make those decisions, which is absolutely not true. But that's just what happens, and it kind of sucks. And so it's an interesting thought experiment, not experiment, but thought about this film, to think of how would this have gone different if the women had been more involved in the family, or just there at the table with them.
Yeah, so. And it's I get it. I wasn't upset. I understood why the women were not a large part of this movie. From the time period, from the culture, it's something I'd seen in other movies. I also watched Goodfellas earlier this year, and it is at least a larger plot point in that movie that his wife is struggling at the fringes of this thing. Yeah. But, and I agree that it's not that the women are beneath the story, it's that the women are above the story. It's I would like to see you be more of a character, but also, I don't want to see you get your hands dirty. I know you don't want to get your hands dirty. And that's what these movies are. It's just dirty hands for 9 hours. Yeah. But I was hoping, I would have liked if there were just these smaller moments of courtesy. Can we clearly get Connie's name when we were introduced to her? I don't know if we get the mom's name, Mrs. Corleone. I don't know if we get her name until the second movie. Can I just have this person is named. Here's one fact about them. They have like 1 or 2 lines. Can I just get like 10% more detail on these characters? And I think that would go a long way to rounding out the cast without changing the plot and the themes of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too because it's adapting a novel, and Mario Puzo, who wrote the novel, also helped to write the scripts for the movie with Coppola. And it like that's what this movie feels like. It really does feel like it's an adaptation of a book, and is that in cinematic form. Whereas I feel like a lot of other adaptions would have turned this into more of like a movie's movie, if that makes sense. There is things that don't necessarily translate from a book to a movie, but I feel like this is one of those things. Like, why did the ball get dropped on this stuff? Like, why don't you know these women, like the names of certain characters? I feel like that would have been in the book. Like, you would have known what the name is. Like all
like, and I'm sure that
I don't know.
They just don't think this information is like super high priority to introduce at any point. Like, it's all the social machinations going on beyond the wedding. It's all the things that Vito is up to in the back room at the wedding. It's not what the bride's name and personality is.
Yeah.
But that being said, I was also surprised at how much heart there is in this movie. Like, even if she isn't immediately named, you can see that Vito's like, this is my daughter's wedding. I understand that it's some sort of cultural thing, whereas the mob boss on the day of this wedding, everybody comes to me and asks me for a favor, but he's like, I do want to spend this day with my daughter. Like, you can't keep me back here all day. I want to go out and dance with her. I want to go out and take family photos.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, as violent, as harsh, as tragic as so much of these movies are, there's also a lot of really sincere love in there. I think I listened to a podcast that described it not as a crime movie with a family. It's a family movie with crime in it.
Exactly. And that is one of the things the offer like tried to really nail in, is like they're not making a mafia movie. They're not making a mobster movie about criminals. They're making a movie about a family and that stuff, which is then unfortunate. Like, we keep going back to that, half of that family is kind of left out of the picture, and it focuses on the men. But that, like we said, that is just, you get to see the brothers, you get to see the relationships that they have there, you get to see they all still, like, they love their mom, but they're not necessarily doting on her. They love their sisters. They have some issues with their wives, let's call it that way, but there is, like, you can sense there are these understandings between them, like, despite problems, despite like why haven't you left him? Like, just like, there is stuff of like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm here for family. Like, I'm not gonna leave you per se. Like, I might leave you, but I'm also gonna and then there's also the like, oh well, I'm gonna go run away to hide in Sicily and marry over there.
That was wild.
There's all sorts of stuff, but you really feel like they're family, and those bonds are important to them. And I think that's an interesting thing about the movie. I think the offer also described the characters, or just the movie in general, as like, this is going to be a movie about characters you hate to love. Just like, like, you will love them, but you kind of hate that you do, because you know that they are criminals, and they just killed this horse and stuck it inside this guy. They're doing terrible things. but you're fascinated. Like you want to follow them, and I think the movies absolutely excel at that.
Yeah, and I think there's enough that you can relate to, that you spend the movies not saying, "Oh, screw these guys. They deserve everything they get." But you're rooting for them to like figure a way out, to like find a more peaceful way of doing things, to find a way to keep the family together.
Mm-hmm.
You see that there's enough good there that you do want that for them. And as many times as there are these moments of coldness, like at the end of the second movie where Michael's mother has died and it's the funeral, and like Kay has been like separated from him and she comes back briefly. He's sitting there with the kids and they're like all dressed up in their funeral clothes, and it's this moment of mourning, but he is like separate from the kids. They're both just sitting there on some armchair together while he does like intense business, and he doesn't like he seems so distant from his kids. They're just like these pieces of property, like they're just one more variable he has to calculate for. But then there's also these for every one of those you get something that's really sweet. Like one of the highlight moments of part 3 for me is that big celebration they're having at the beginning of the movie where Michael's been awarded some like medal. I do like how every one of these movies has time for like, here's a big family celebration. Here's some sort of party. We get as many parties as we get business meetings. But in part 3, he like goes out on the dance floor to have this dance with his daughter, Mary. And there's some little girl, some cousin, some niece, like we don't know who she is. All these movies, whenever you go to one of these parties, there's just piles of kids running around. And I did really like that. There's like half a dozen anonymous children at any one of these just scampering around. There's this little girl who you can tell like looks up to Mary. She's like kind of clinging to her leg. And when Mary's dancing with Michael, this little girl's like kind of trying to like hold on to Mary's leg. Like, I want to dance too. And then like Michael and Mary separate and they each take the girl's hand and the three of them like dance together in a ring around the floor.
It's
That's
a sweet
so
moment.
precious. Like,
Yeah.
Even so far into his fall, Michael is still capable of moments like that. I really appreciate the time it gives to these little moments, even when there are also times when it shuts the door on them.
Yeah, I think the third movie especially drives it home. If you haven't picked up on it yet, the movie is about family.
Yeah.
And the third movie, I think, really spells it out when Michael is talking to his daughter, and he's like, I'm doing this for you. This whole business with the Vatican and the foundation and all the stuff. He's like, I'm doing this for you. And she replies, but like, you're doing this to help other people, right? And he's like, well, yeah, but I'm doing this for you is the thing. And so it like at the end of the day, I think that is a good picture of what this is about. Like he is trying to set up his family so that they don't have to worry about their lives, their kids' lives. And I think in his own way, Michael trying to take the family in a more legitimate direction is also that same thing. He's like, I mean, he knows that, yes, we have done some terrible things. We still will do some terrible things. But ultimately, like, we're trying to take this in a legitimate direction so that we don't have to deal with that, or so that my son or my daughter doesn't have to deal with that aspect of the thing. If we can somehow shield them and protect them from that, I think that's a success. And I think that's what he's trying to do. And that was something that I noticed about that third film is he kept having to like physically state it of like, I'm doing this for you. So yeah, I would like to talk about. Do you have
I just wanted to mention that like in that movie, he set up this foundation in the name of his father, like the Vito Corleone Foundation. And part of it is like this PR move trying to make the family seem more legitimate. But also, when he's talking about the charities they're going to do, like they're going to like rebuild parts of Sicily and help out children and help out artists, like I feel like you do know the family well enough to see, while parts of this are a ploy, you're like, I think Vito Corleone would want to do those things. He was a man who,
Absolutely.
despite being this violent godfather figure, he did have enough care within him that you could absolutely believe that, yes, he wants to build a children's hospital or something. He's got that part of him too. This isn't a movie
Absolutely.
where anybody's really black and white. As dark as some characters are, you can also believe that they do have really good intentions in other parts of their lives.
Yeah, I think there's a layer of family outside of the nuclear, right? Like, there is this like, hey, we're all Italians. We're Italian Americans. And that's from what I'm kind of gathering from the like small amount of mafia media that I've consumed, is that's kind of how it started. Is they were just looking out for one another, of just like, hey, the police aren't necessarily going to look out for you. The police are gonna look out for themselves, or for the people who were born here or speak the language, right? They're not really gonna look out for you. So we'll start our own protection. Like we'll do that. And that's how that racket kind of came to be. And then now the mafia kind of came to be, from what I understand. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but that's just kind of what it seems like. I would like to talk about the second movie in particular. So for some odd reason, I kind of liked this one a little better.
I think a lot of people feel that way. I think that's what I've heard is like slightly more often people are like, I like Godfather Part 2.
It's kind of back and forth is from what I gathered. That first one I think is maybe a better put together movie in general, but they do some really interesting stuff in the second one, and it goes places I didn't expect. I didn't expect them to go down to Cuba. I really liked that stuff where he gets to kind of see the world in a way, like he gets to see a larger sense of the world, and he gets to see this rebel blow himself up like right in front of him. And Michael almost, like in the moment, Michael almost has no reaction, but reflecting on it, he's kind of sympathetic. He's like, I like these guys, like they're loyal. Like that's the kind of loyalty that we need in our family and stuff like that. Like I liked that stuff. I liked that it was both a prequel and a sequel at the same time. That is fascinating. On one of our other podcasts, The Captain's Log, I was recently mentioning to you the show Pachinko on Apple TV Plus, and it does a similar thing where like it's telling one story in the past and one in a more modern day setting, and there's parallels between them and stuff like that, and that's kind of what this one is doing. I didn't recognize Robert De Niro I had no idea that was him. Again, never seen these movies, never really paid attention, didn't know that was him. Found out afterwards that was him, and I was like, "Oh God, that's who it was. He was fantastic." He won an Oscar for it. So yeah,
I'm surprised you didn't recognize him. Although when I was a little kid, and there's all these like names and faces you pick up from adult culture, but just aren't Like, why would I have seen a Robert De Niro movie? Why would I have seen an Al Pacino movie? I am 8 years old. They don't make movies for kids. So for the longest time, my brain smushed those two together. I thought they were the same guy. I couldn't tell them apart. I
Right.
don't think it
Or
was until
they
I was
just
in
always
college.
were in the same movies together.
Right. Or like very parallel things. I don't think it was until I was in college and I watched all of Angels in America and I'm like, okay, this is Al Pacino. And then I watched that movie Stardust and I'm like, okay, that's Robert De Niro. I know him. And now that now that I've grown up and there's so many movies I can watch an R-rated movie whenever I want. My mom's not there to stop me.
For sure.
There's all these actors that like I just knew the names of growing up that now I can actually watch their careers and really get a hold on them and really get to know them. Which is one of the best things about getting older is that you get to really understand a name you've heard a bunch of times.
Yeah.
But we did watch Angels in America earlier this year. We watched that for Pride Month, and we've gotten to spend a lot of quality time with Al Pacino this summer.
What's interesting is I should have recognized Robert De Niro and known it was him. I think the earliest movie I saw him in was Taxi Driver, which I absolutely loved. It's a hard movie to stomach, but it was only made, I think, like 2 years after Godfather Part 2. So like it's not even that he's like that much older, but I should have recognized him in that. But yeah, fantastic performance by him in that. I loved the like committee hearings. Like that was
that was interesting.
One of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
I loved that stuff. I don't know why that particularly spoke out to me rather than them like giving out favors and doing all of this and that and stuff. Like I don't know why, but that just I like when that was on screen, I perked up and was just like, oh, what is this? I like this.
Yeah.
What's happening here? This is cool.
And the fact that it's gotten that far, it does add a lot of stakes to what's going on. And it is kind of interesting to see this culture that's like so insular and like everybody knows the codes and everybody knows what each other's talking about being sort of brought out into the light and needed to be explained in these like clear factual layman's terms.
Right. Yeah. I think what's interesting to me is it's also because from the moment Michael takes over, when and I forget her name, not to add fuel to the fire of forgetting these women's names.
His wife.
Yes, Kay. When she is with him in the office by the desk and then is about to like go get him some tea or something like that, and like is walking out, and immediately more of the men enter the room and you see the door shut, but she gets that one last look at him as they are paying their respects to him. It's such a haunting like, well, shit, like we just lost Michael. Now he's that. But then from that moment on to when you see the committee hearings to when you see his brother Fredo having that like temper tantrum of like, it should have been me, like I should have been the one, is fascinating. It's the family expanding in power and that bubble popping finally, just like, oh, okay, you've gotten big enough where the US government is investigating and trying to figure out like, okay, we know you do this stuff, we just can't pin it on you, and when we do, something happens that we can't get them to testify for whatever reason. But it's not even that like outside force that is taking notice. It is the family itself that is crumbling from the inside, and I think that is part of what makes these films so tragic, is that at the end of 2, Michael has to kill his brother, and it just it sucks, and Fredo knows it too. Like when the kid is called back to be like, oh no, you have to go to Reno with your uncle. Like Fredo, you can just see his face, just like, this is it. This is the moment. I am not coming home, right? And that just sucks. And it's done in a way that is so sad, is so tragic, but is so calm and so peaceful that it's an interesting juxtaposition from the one scene you get where, and I'm not sure, I don't remember who it was that was gunned down at the ticket booth there, but just how gratuitous it was that they were just shooting and shooting and shooting and shooting for like 2 minutes straight. It's like, all right, guys, he's dead. Like, come on, guys, he's still dead. Why are you still shooting?
You get it.
He's still dead.
Right.
But yeah, like that stuff, the way it can go back and forth between that, the way it can go from these family parties to these like very intimate moments where Michael is kind of embarrassed to say I love you in front of his brothers, to him sitting there in the Vatican with these gorgeous walls and to see how much power he had. Just holy shit. Like that is, I think, one of the most interesting things about this this series of movies is how it can go back and forth between all of that stuff.
Yeah. I think the Fredo storyline is very effective because, at least for me, in the first movie, when you're trying to figure out who this family is and who all is in it, I think I wasn't sure if Fredo was one of the brothers or just one of the hangers on for a while. Like, you're learning all these faces. I don't know any of these actors. I know
Are they
Al
family
Pacino
by
is,
blood,
but I'm learning the
or
rest
are
of
they
them. I eventually
by
realized
something else, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I eventually recognized that Sonny was the dad from Elf. That was a big help. I'm like, okay, now I can tell that guy apart. That's James Caan. I remember him from Elf. But you're like, okay, Michael's the main one. There's James Caan. There's Connie, the girl one. There's Tom Hagen. I do like the addition of Tom Hagen, that they have this adopted brother who is this street orphan that they took in, who's not Italian by blood, so he's sort of within the culture and without the culture, and so you're focusing on all these other characters, and then there's Fredo, who just sort of skims by under the radar throughout the whole first movie, and when he has this big upset in the second movie, you really feel for him because you're like, oh, I also don't think about Fredo. I'm part of the problem.
Right. That scene, I loved that scene when he just gets so upset. But yeah, immediately after that scene, I was like, as much as I love that scene, I now want to know more. I wished I knew more about him. I wished I had known that this is what he was feeling earlier on. Because I feel like it almost would have been more effective. But it on the other hand, it's kind of brilliant that you don't.
Yeah.
And then he just blows up and it's just like, whoa, dude, what the hell? I mean, I get it. He is the first in line, right? Or the next in line. I'm not sure if he had an older brother or not.
Sonny's the oldest. It's Sonny, and then it's Fredo, and then it's Michael, and then it's Connie. And then I think they adopt Tom when Tom's 10 or 12 or something.
Yeah. Just to see him being it should have been me. It was supposed, I was the next one to do all of it. It just, I felt that. I was just like, man, so good. And he's a very distinct looking actor too. He's also in Dog Day Afternoon with Pacino, and they're both phenomenal. Pacino in particular is outstanding in that one. But that was an interesting thing about watching The Offer is that the time of casting him in The Godfather, Pacino was a nobody. Like, no one really knew who he was. And it was because of The Godfather and stuff like Dog Day Afternoon that he just became a star. And it was interesting because they didn't really so in the offer, there was a particular scene that I was waiting for in the first Godfather, because in the offer, they made it like it was so effective for me in that I was expecting a certain thing, and it kind of didn't live up to my expectations in the actual movie, which is interesting to me. And this is the moment where Michael kills the two guys in the cafe.
Yeah.
Which is, again, a famous scene for exactly what I was expecting it to be. However, in the offer, there's they talk about people like trying to kill the project. There's a bunch of Italian Americans that are I think it's like the Italian American Leagues, something. I'm not sure what, but they didn't like the book, or they thought this movie was going to portray Italians in a negative light and all of this stuff, and they kept having to convince them, like, no, like we're not. Like, this is not it's about family. Like, it's gonna be good. You'll love it. All this stuff. And even after they hired Pacino and he was working on this, they kept trying to get him fired. And to the point where I think they did at one point. And then they went behind people's back to let's just film this scene. Let's bring the guy in here before he sees the act. Like, let's have him sit down and watch him perform this scene. And it is that scene in the cafe where he shoots them. And from seeing the actor in the lookalike Pacino in the offer be like, just this very small, timid, quiet guy, but confident in his acting ability. Just like, so what kind of character do I need to play? Like, all this stuff. Like, thank you. I'm glad you guys liked me in this play that I was like. He was so nice, but just so timid, so quiet. Then he shoots these people in that scene, and he turns around and you can just see him venting. He's just like, he's mad, he's pissed off in that scene. And I was just like, that is not the same guy. Like, holy shit, that is someone else. And that is the effect that scene is supposed to have. And it worked in the actual movie, right? Like, that is one of the moments that you recognize, okay, Michael is absolutely not the same person anymore. But in my opinion, it felt tamer in a weird way. So that was maybe one of the negative consequences of watching The Offer first.
But also, I feel like there's a very small amount of people who are watching The Offer before they watch The Godfather. I don't know if there's a lot of young folks. I don't know if there's like 17-year-olds out there who are like, I've never seen The Godfather, but I love Miles Teller, so I'm going to watch The Offer. If that's you, please write in. What's your experience?
Yeah, exactly. But I thought that was a fantastic scene as well. I don't know. Do you want to talk about the third film, the ending, that silent scream or something?
There is the third film. What it chooses to do is so perplexing to me. Like, I couldn't I couldn't get the same emotional grasp on it. It's because I was sort of befuddled by what's happening. The plot with like Mary falling in love with her cousin. It's like, upsetting, but it's like more confusing than it is upsetting. Like I was just sitting there like, I don't get this. Why is this happening? The fact that so much of that movie is about like picking a new pope and opera, like I feel like none of the plot lines in that movie, even though it is set like 16 years ahead of the last movie you saw, like you can't see them coming. They don't feel real. They don't feel related to what you saw before, but there are moments in it I do like. I talked about how he sets this foundation up in your father's name, and you do believe in at least part of the goodness of what that's trying to do. He's got that sweet dance with Mary. I like when his son, Anthony, comes to him and he's like, I don't want to do this. And like Kay is brought back into the family to like vouch for her children. Like, Michael, he really does not want to do this. And there's a fight, but then Michael's like, okay, I have to let you go. And they still stay family. Like after he has that stroke, his kids are right there, like giving him hugs and kisses, saying I love you. I did really like that despite these movies being these pillars of old-fashioned masculinity, you also have like these men in these movies that are like say I love you to their fathers and their brothers, that you will like hug them and kiss them on the cheek and things like that. Like I like these movies don't shy away from physical affection, and how like anybody that can be your love language, no matter if you are also a criminal who shoots many people. I like that the opera does get to be this pivotal scene in that movie. It's an odd addition, but it's shot beautifully. So much of the opera is in it. This is the most opera I've ever seen.
It's interesting because I think this is how a lot of people view the movies in general, or the book too. It is an operatic story, right? It is this grand scale that has happened over multiple generations, right? And that it feels operatic. And so to have this coda, this epilogue, right at the end, be like, okay, they go to an opera. It feels right in that sense. But yes, you are correct in also that like, okay, we know that they escaped the like they made it through those committee hearings, but then 16 years down the road making business deals with the Vatican and all that stuff, and just like, whoa. Holy moly!
Yeah, how'd we get here?
Yeah, we skipped a bit here.
Right. Take me back to Vegas. I didn't see enough Vegas.
It's
I want to go there.
Yeah. But I think to get back to what I just said, the operatic nature of the story, the ending scene, just tragic.
I think the actual. Yeah. Even if the final movie is a letdown, I think the actual final scene is very powerful. I do like the silent scream, and I love the final shot of the movie is just a flash forward to old Michael just sitting there alone in like a courtyard of his house. And there's that text on the screen that says, Italians will toast each other with the phrase "Cent'anni," 100 years. Your family will live on and prosper for 100 years. And it's like, that's what it translates to, 100 years of life. And it's this Michael who hasn't died. The movie's not about the literal death of Michael Corleone. It's about the death of his heart. It's about the death of his emotions. It's about the death of things he loves. Like his daughter has been killed. He's lost all these other family members, some of them by his own order. Right, and he just has to continue to live with all of that hanging over him. That's powerful.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff. But yeah, like that is the thing. It is so operatic. It is so heavy by the end of this stuff. And like I recognize that, like, okay, these movies are about Michael transitioning into power, becoming this monster. Like it's fascinating to watch, but it is heavy. And that is partly why it's just like, I recognize that these are classics, that people love these movies. They are written about all the time and dissected, and I don't know if I really want to go back to them all that often.
That's okay.
Man, this is a weird comparison. Please don't take this in the wrong way. It's like a lasagna. It's so heavy. It's so thick. I love it, but I can't eat it every meal.
I get the metaphor. Yes.
Right. It's so good. I love it. But it's thick. It's heavy. I need a salad. Give me a salad every now and then, right? Give me some pizza.
I understand.
Give me something else. But yeah, that's my final thoughts on the Godfather.
It's like a lasagna. I want to ask you. Earlier this year, I watched Goodfellas. I'd never seen it before, but I knew so much of it through cultural osmosis. I knew to watch another movie or show and spot what was a Goodfellas homage, even though I never had seen Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. So I watched it, and I was expecting to really like it based on everything everybody's told me. And I just mildly liked it. Like, it's a movie that's a 10 out of 10 for so many people, and it was like a 7.5 for me. And I'm like, where'd that other 2.5 go? Why don't I like this more? I feel like I should like this more. And then I watched
Speaking my
these.
Language, yeah.
I feel like I did like The Godfathers more than I liked Goodfellas. What are your thoughts?
So, yeah, I mean, like I said, kind of at the start, I think I'm discovering that I don't like mafia movies as much as I want to. Like, I want to love them. And I'm only kind of realizing that I kind of like them, right? I like the idea of them and stuff.
You like crime at large, but this might not be your specific variety of crime.
And it is a sub-genre of crime movie story-ish. I think Goodfellas is more chaotic in nature.
Definitely.
It is based off of a true story, which is fascinating. Man, the scene in there where the cops are raiding the house and it is just pure chaos is like it's in a weird way. Like, it to me, it was the idea of like people just love looking at a car wreck. Like, you drive by and you just you can't help but look at this thing, and that's kind of what Goodfellas was to me. Is that it is this. It's another tragic story, but one that blows up in a more quick and violent fashion, whereas Godfather, like we said, is slower. It is more operatic. It is more about the metaphor of like he lost his heart rather than a physical death here. So they're just like two sides of the same coin, if that makes sense.
They are trying to do different things. You're right that this is more slow and methodical, and Goodfellas is literally chaotic. Yes. I think The Godfather while it has more darkness in it, more violence in it, I think it also has more love in it. I could see how much this family really loved each other. And Goodfellas has less love in it, but also has more of a commentary on where it is. Like, Lorraine Bracco is there being a more active voice for herself in telling Ray Liotta, you're leaving me out of your life. You're dragging me around in these things. I don't like it. And there's a scene in that movie where she talks about how she has to hang out with all these other like mobster wives. And she's like, I don't really like them. Yeah. I'm not friends with them, but I have to hang out with these people because our husbands do business together. And I can't get out to any other community. Like, this has to be my community now. I am forced into it. Yeah. I think there's really interesting conflicts in that movie. It is shot well. Like, the one shots going into the restaurant are good. I like the music. I love that scene towards the end of the movie where Ray Liotta's just on a lot of coke and he's driving around trying to get all these errands done, and one of them's like, I have
helicopter that he keeps
right.
like, I loved that. That was fantastic.
I have felt like that scene so many times. That scene really reached out to me. Like, I have had days like this, especially where one of the things he has to do is like to make that pasta sauce. And he's like, I have to show up at my house every hour, stir the pasta sauce. And it's like, if you just took this off your plate, if you told yourself I'm using a different pasta sauce recipe, or you know what, I'm not cooking dinner for my family, we're going to go out to dinner instead. Like, he could save himself so much stress, and he doesn't. He keeps putting more things on his plate, and I'm like, oh, buddy, I've been there.
It's that kind of paranoia that I almost wish we got to see a little bit more of within the Godfather as we explored characters like, or as I wished we had explored characters like Fredo. Like, that's what I want to see from these like C and D level characters in the family, of just like, how do they deal with all of this and the paranoia of the government is now investigating them. Michael is trying to keep things together, but oh man, they like, this guy just got killed. This other like rival family is starting to maybe betray us, and like all of that. Like, God, like, there's fascinating stuff in all of them, and they're each just depicting different aspects of that in different ways. So it's, I mean, they're in interesting 1-2 punch, I feel like, or 1-2-3 punch. 1-2. Anyways, but yeah, lots of fascinating stuff. I still want to watch more Mafia movies, all that. Like,
sure, there's more out there we can try.
I'm still interested in them, but just from the ones that I've seen, like, but I think I've also jumped straight to, these are the 10 out of 10s, like the best ones you can watch. And so my expectations going in were just like these have to be a 10 out of 10. And I get there and I'm just like, like I liked them. I just don't know that, like, I would say that they're my favorite movies. There's stuff that is absolutely fascinating. Like, you can see me getting excited to be like, I love that one scene, like all that stuff. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's just like, I'd prefer something else. So
I want to ask you another question.
Go for it.
I was thinking about how these are classic dad movies, and I'm wondering, what do you think the classic dad movies are going to be for our generation? Like, if you had kids, what would they roll their eyes at you always watching?
It's going to be some of the Marvel movies for sure.
But do you think those aren't going to persist? Like, these are dad movies in that it's like, this is from a previous generation. I don't super get this.
It's still going to be like Captain America Winter Soldier. I'm just like,
right, and the kids are like,
keep watching this one, Dad.
Right,
God,
they're like, Sam Wilson is Captain America, Dad. What are you doing watching Steve Rogers?
Right,
we only know Sam.
Movies that define a generation. To be honest, even something like Everything Everywhere All at Once. I could see being an interesting, like, it is a generation defining, like, this is how we think, this is how we feel, this is the issues that we're facing, the kind of comedy, the just like all of that like, stuff. I feel like will stick with me and will strike a chord in me, but future generations down the road might not understand it exactly. Even if they do get that, it's like, okay, it's about like connecting with family members and with your kids and not necessarily understanding them or falling in love and out of love and still being together despite it all and all sorts of stuff. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Kinda. Is that how you were?
So I was thinking, I think one of the reasons why these movies played better on me is that earlier this year we saw The Batman, a 3-hour crime film. And I think that helped prime me for this. And so I've been thinking, is that the millennial Godfather? Are like kids born 5 years from now going to grow up rolling their eyes? God, Dad's watching The Batman again. It's so boring. Why is it 3 hours long? I don't get this. And it's like,
I don't know.
Not that Batman isn't going to persist in some way, but I think this Batman, this grungy Batman, might be so attached to like people in our age range that younger kids are like not going to, they're going to grow up and like they'll feel like they have to watch it for homework to connect with their father, but they wouldn't watch it on their own time.
That's kind of what I'm getting at with everything everywhere all at once, is that like even in the Batman, the soundtrack is pulling from Nirvana, right? Which is like completely our generation, if not slightly before. And just the way he is, this like dark, moody, emo millennial, right? That is doing like that connects with us. Where like I think everything you know the movie,
right? And this is such a dad thing, also to love the movie but not know what it's called.
Well, I'm terrible with names, but that name is so long and confusing and specific. But just the fact that it is about a generation like ours that has trouble connecting with their parents, and there is this generational divide, which is something that happens every generation or so, right? But like the way it's portrayed within the comedy, within the everythingness, without spoiling it, but also like hinting at that stuff, right? Like the specificness of that, I think, is what speaks to our generation, and so those themes might persist and might be able to be expressed in something for a younger generation, but the way they are expressed in that film in particular, I think is like our kids or who knows what are going to be like, what? Like, I don't get it. Like, what's up with this movie? I don't know.
We'll see. I'm going to ask. I have a cousin who's a couple years younger than me, and he's got a kid, and he's going to have another kid. And when I see him at the baby shower in a couple weeks, I'm going to ask him, what do you think your dad movie's going to be for these kids? I need to poll the populace.
Indeed. I mean, that's the thing. Who knows? Maybe our generation's dad movie hasn't been made yet, right? And it's coming out in 3 years. And then boom, it hits. And it's just like, there it is. That's it. Melissa, question answered.
We will know when we see it.
Exactly. Good stuff. Well, I think that is about it for our thoughts on the Godfather trilogy. Let us do a quick check-in on bingo, our movie trope bingo. Let's see. Restore some pages. No, I don't need to do that. Okay, let me pull this up on screen real fast. See if we have anything. Villain with a pet is the one that
Kyle,
I have.
You get that one. As soon as that guy with the horse was introduced, I'm like, this is your time.
Well, but just Marlon Brando sitting there with a cat. He's sitting there like as he's stroking the cat. That is like the stereotypical like villain with a pet.
I will say he is only ambiguously a villain, and that cat is only ambiguously a pet. We don't see that cat again. I don't know whose that is.
Yeah.
But that one like crooked movie producer whose horse they kill, he absolutely qualifies you.
Two things on that. I don't know how true they are, because again, I don't know what they embellished in the offer. Apparently that cat was a stray and just walked on set, and Marlon it just absolutely took to Brando and would not leave his hide. And so they were just like, I guess the cat's staying. Like, it's in the movie now. And then again, don't know how true this is. Apparently the horse head was real.
This is what I have heard. I have heard this my whole life. I remember telling my dad this because I heard it on the radio or something. And he's like, that's not true. They're not allowed to do that. And I'm like, but Dad, they said in their Hollywood trivia quiz game to win a free car wash.
Here's what happened according to the offer. They hired an artist, a prop designer, I'm not sure who exactly, to make a horse head, this fake horse head. Didn't work out. They were like, this looks so fake. Like, this is not gonna be believable at all. And then I mentioned that like there is this like the real mafia was kind of getting involved with this of like, hey, you better not portray us in a negative light, and technically we don't exist, so you know, all that stuff. I think one of the like a mafia member ended up being hired on the crew and all this stuff, and then yeah, they like last minute they were like, we need you to make us a horse head. And the one like mafia guy was like, I can get you a horse head. And then just showed up with a horse head, and it was real.
What I've heard,
just like, don't ask, just use it and move on. Just
what I've heard is that it is from a manufacturing place that was turning a horse into something, into food or glue or any one of those cliche things you do with a dead horse. Like the horse was not killed for this. This was just byproduct of another thing that was happening to the horse. There's not blood on the hands of Paramount Pictures.
From what I understand, at the very least, that is what they told them. Yes. That like, hey, the horse was gonna die anyways. But then again, it was just like, well, how true is that, right? Like, and like they kind of got this thing unsanctioned last minute anyways, so it was like the whole thing is a big mystery of just like, what exactly, you know what, let's not ask, let's move on. Right. So yeah, I think that is it there that I got villain with a pet there. Let me open that back up again though. Did that give me any other bingos? I didn't see villain with a pet. Yes, that did give me one more bingo. So woohoo, bingo for me.
Nice.
But I think that is about it for our bingo check-in. So, Melissa, recommendations. What else might you recommend?
I realized that I have inadvertently watched several wonderful films about Italian-American culture over the last year that I get a chance to talk about.
Yeah.
I recommend the movie Big Night. This stars Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub as these brothers who've come from Italy to somewhere on the East Coast, maybe Jersey, also in the 1950s, so around the time that The Godfather takes place. They've come here to start a restaurant. And the restaurant is failing because Tony Shalhoub is the cook and he does everything super traditional, super high quality, the authentic Italian way. And they're getting a lot of people coming in who are like, just don't have the palate he has. They want just sort of like real basic spaghetti.
Yeah.
And the business is struggling. If it fails, they might have to go back to Italy. And they've got one final ploy, which is that the singer Louis Prima is rumored to come through town. And they're like, if he comes to our restaurant and he loves what we do and he spreads the word, that could save us. So on the day he's supposed to be in town, like playing at a nearby club, they go all out. They have this massive party. They are making the finest food, the most extravagant dishes, the most wine. They're pulling out all the stops in an attempt to save the restaurant. And I watched this movie last year, and I thought the beginning's a little slow. It took me a while to get into, but this third act, when they actually have this party, is wonderful. It's so exuberant. Everybody's drinking, everybody's dancing, and it's got the best final shot I've ever seen in a movie, which is just one long unbroken take where Stanley Tucci makes an omelet in real time. I'm not kidding. It was thrilling. Watch him do it. Good. I also recommend Moonstruck, starring Cher. This movie gave Cher an Oscar. It's just a movie about love life troubles. She's like dating a guy who won't commit. He like goes back home to Italy to like care for his ailing mother. They've just gotten engaged, and she's like going to tell his brother that he's estranged from. Like, hey, I know you two haven't been together, like you two haven't talked in years, but we're getting married finally. We would like you to be there. And it's Nicolas Cage, and he like works at a bakery, and he like sliced off his hand in a bread slicing machine. It's a really interesting, wild Nicolas Cage performance. And it's about their romance. Yeah. There's no like normal toned down run of the mill Nicolas Cage performance. What am I talking about?
Right.
But he's not. Have you seen him with a fake hand before? But it's about like this new romance, and also like her older parents who are like fighting, and they maybe find new lovers. And it's about like the moon. When the moon is full, it sort of plays tricks on people, and it makes you act in weird ways, and maybe it acts like a Cupid's bow when you'll fall in love in ways you haven't before. Moonstruck, very charming. Also, My Cousin Vinny, again, an Oscar award winning performance from Marissa Tomei. So fun, so solid, a really well-crafted screenplay, really stellar acting. I knew she won an Oscar, but if you told me Joe Pesci also won an Oscar for his work in this movie, I would believe that as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it's good. They're solid, all of them. Go watch.
That's another one of those movies I haven't watched. That should probably be on my list of shame. My Cousin Vinny. It's one that my parents loved. And I heard the name of it, and I think they watched it like once a year.
Nice tradition.
Like, and it was just like, this is one that I always heard them mention, and he was like, Kyle, you should go back and watch that because your parents loved it. But yeah, I've not seen that one. Of course, we've been recommending here on the show stuff like Goodfellas. We talked about The Offer on Paramount Plus, which I highly recommend. If you want more of a young Pacino, and I don't remember his name, the actor that plays Fredo,
John Casal.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, they are in Dog Day Afternoon, which was fantastic. That movie,
you really liked
awesome.
That one, yeah.
I loved it. That was incredible. That was great. If you want a good crime movie, go check that one out. If you want a more organized crime story that really digs into the characters, isn't mafia per se, maybe runs up against it every now and then, go watch Boardwalk Empire on
good
HBO.
One.
That's set in Jersey City. On the boardwalk, but you meet like Al Capone. He's one of the main characters in there. You meet all sorts of bootleggers. You meet Lucky Luciano. He's one of the characters in the air. They go down to Cuba as well. It's a lot of the same stuff. That happens in The Godfather also happens in this show. Betrayal, love, betrayal within within a family, specifically, right? All of that good stuff. That's what I would recommend.
Good ones.
Go check those out.
Okay.
There you go. That's our recommendations. So, Melissa, it's your turn for Shametember.
Yes. I had several different things I was considering, and I love a theme. You know, I like to pitch 3 things in the same theme. Just thinking about them, and then when you said The Godfather, and I was given this very traditionally masculine film, the epitome of dad movie, I thought, I gotta bring it with the chick flicks.
Movies. Yeah.
Right. I gotta bring it with the chick flicks I've never seen. And within that, I specifically went for more dramatic things. I was trying to think of what is The Godfather for women. And I thought about Googling that, like, but I knew I would Google it.
Top 10 rom-coms of the 90s, right? Like,
yeah. It's like, we're not going to watch 10 things I hate about you. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. I thought about Googling The Godfather for women, but I thought I would just get a Merriam-Webster dictionary definition for the word godmother.
Godmother.
So I didn't do that. I'm like, I don't think that'll work the way I want it to work. Pitch number 1. This is the number 1 movie on my list of shame. I think I pitched this 2 years ago when we started this tradition, and I still haven't seen it. I've not seen the entirety of the thing. It is on my list of shame because I started watching it when I was a kid, and it first came out in like 1997. And then I got scared by the disaster scene at the end, and I made my mom turn it off, and I've never finished watching Titanic.
Interesting. Okay.
Of course, we all know how Titanic goes. We all know that this is another one of those movies where everybody knows the trappings of the thing. Everybody knows the homages, the iconography. Yes. I want to fully watch all of Titanic, all like 3 hours, the Godfatherian length of Titanic. And I think it's also
that works. That might be the godmother.
Yeah, this is the godmother of films, Titanic. I think it's also good timing since James Cameron will return to film later this year. Yep. He hasn't made anything in like 13 years, and now he's back with Avatar: The Way of Water, his next wettest film.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So if you want to be primed for wet James Cameron films, it's this or The Abyss. So we can check this one off our list. Pitch number 2. I do not know anything about Pride and Prejudice. So I am pitching the 2005 film adaptation of Pride and Prejudice starring Keira Knightley. I am so unfamiliar with this that I thought Colin Firth was in this movie, and I was shocked to find out he isn't. I don't know what Colin Firth movie I'm thinking of. Maybe he's in an older adaptation of this. Maybe he's in another Austen adaptation from around this time. Maybe. I was completely mistaken. He isn't here. It's Matthew McFadden.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Pride and Prejudice.
Never seen a Pride and Prejudice. Sparks fly when spirited Elizabeth Bennet meets single, rich, and proud Mr. Darcy. But Mr. Darcy reluctantly finds himself in love with a woman beneath his class. Can each overcome their own pride and prejudice? We could find out.
Okay. Yeah.
Pitch number 3. This is the only Godfather equivalent that actually involves crime. It is Thelma and Louise. Again, we all know it when we see it. We know the two ladies holding hands while they drive off a cliff. I don't know what else is in this movie. I know that, and it's like one of the first on-screen appearances of my fellow Missourian Brad Pitt. Don't know what else is in here.
Interesting. Okay.
I just know Gina Davis and Susan Sarandon are two best friends who set out on an adventure, but it soon turns around to a terrifying escape from being hunted by the police as they escape for crimes they've committed. They kill somebody, and they're on the run.
Good old gals being pals. As much as you know me, as much as I like crime, not gonna pick Thelma and Louise.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is a tough one between Titanic or Pride and Prejudice. How long is Pride and Prejudice? Because that one's a pretty long one too, right?
I don't know if it's incredibly long. It's not Godfatherian in length.
Maybe not.
Let me see. The 2005 Pride and Prejudice, let me find it. You can watch it on Peacock, and it is how many long? 2 hours and 7 minutes.
Okay,
as opposed to Titanic,
so like
which
3
is
hours-ish.
3:14, coming in at a pie. It is pie in length.
Okay. God, this is a really difficult one for reasons you don't know. All right, so Titanic is on my list of shame. Never saw it. Period. Pride and Prejudice, also haven't seen. Not on my list of shame, though. I don't feel like I necessarily need to watch this one.
This is the old-fashioned gender stereotypes. Gender's a spectrum. Yes. Watch whatever movies you want, but like, I understand why it is not on your list of shame that you have not seen Pride and Prejudice. I get it.
However, if I choose that one, it would open us up to watching Pride and Prejudice and Zombies down the road. which is like I know you're not a big zombie fan, but it is one of those things of like, well, hey, now that we've seen Pride and Prejudice, like, why don't we check out this weird spoof of
No, in the future we are going to do both of those in 1 week. If you pitch me Pride and Prejudice and zombies, we are doing all of them. We're doing both of those the same week, like when we watched both Suspirias.
I am down for that. Let's go with Titanic.
Good.
Thank
you for allowing me to finally cross this off my list. This is a movie that has been at the top of my list for years, and I have kind of wanted to save for this show.
Man, we had that double set VHS when we were younger. Man, it was that sitting right next to Ben-Hur.
I have thought about doing a series of pitches that are movies that were on 2 VHS tapes.
Honestly, great theme. It's like Ben-Hur, 10 Commandments, the Titanic, right? There's all
Casino.
Those ones. Yeah.
We can get back to Robert De Niro. He will return to us.
Oh, good stuff. All right. So next week, Titanic.
Right. I think this is the correct choice. No disrespect to Miss Jane Austen and her fine works, but this is what we follow up The Godfather with. I think this is appropriate.
I think this is a good pick as well. Well, there you go. That's it for this week here on the show. So, Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities, show where my brother Jams and I talk about weird old kids shows you feel like only you remember. We just put out an episode on The Jetsons to celebrate the canonical birth of George Jetson this year. I think we missed his actual birthday, but we're close enough.
Exactly. That's fun. I'm glad you guys got to do that one. You guys can find me at Yo Kyle Springer. And if you guys would like to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at the Whatnauts, we are at the Whatnauts on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. You guys know the deal with all of that stuff. Go check out one of our other videos over that way. This has been episode 221 of the Whatnauts Review Show. We will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.